Who wins and who loses this November? Let's ask the guy who's supposed to know. David Flaherty from Magellan Strategies. Good to have you here.
Good to be back, John.
All right, let's just do the big one first. The last poll that you guys did showed Trump getting trounced here in Colorado in a head-to-head with Hillary, 2-1. Why?
Well,
is that, you think that's still holding, and how does that compare nationally?
I don't. I think things have changed. You know, going back to the spring when we had a very vigorous Republican primary going on, Trump was getting attacked from all sides. He's been saying bombastic things that he's offended nearly every group and gender in the country. But at the same time, he isn't a politician. At the same time, he's talking strong on immigration, and honestly, that's why he won the primary. Among general election voters, though, matching up with Hillary hadn't been beat up, as if you will, from Bernie. And remember, Bernie came along, won our state by 60%. So the tables have somewhat turned right now, where Trump has actually had a little bit of a breather and his numbers have stabilized.
And you're talking nationwide?
Nationwide, yes.
And what we thought was unthinkable, unimaginable, from a pollster's point of view, is this now imaginable? Is the term President Trump, is this something that has grown in likelihood? Or possibility, I should say. I
would say the possibility of a Trump candidacy, President Trump, is more likely than it was 3 months ago. But I would still say it is unlikely due to just simple demographic vote, the demographic vote as it's going to come in 2016. We're going to have a higher number of Latinos, we're going to have a higher number of women, we're going to have a higher number of younger voters. And until Trump sort of earns their vote, which seems like a very tall order considering his very tough immigration policy, it's still unlikely, but it looks better than it did 3 months ago. And national polls, state-level polls, and a lot of the swing states have shown that, from Quinnipiac, Virginia. There's a lot of stuff that shows it's even, because Hillary, in all honesty, is much weaker right now, or much less liked than most pundits thought at the beginning of the year.
Explain to me this one, which is a lot of Bernie supporters, if he doesn't get the nomination, a sizable amount of them say they're going to switch over to Trump, not to Hillary. You would think that those Democrats would naturally, they'd bitch for a while and then they'd come back and they'd vote for Hillary.
It's one of the biggest things that you're going to have to watch. I wouldn't necessarily say surveys are showing that Bernie's voters are so repelled by Hillary that they're going to go to Trump. I mean, I believe in 2012, a lot of younger voters were disappointed with what what President Obama had not accomplished. But they took one glance at Romney and like, well, that's not my guy. I'm sticking with what I know, or I'm not voting. This cycle's different because they really do look at Hillary and you're like, all right, it's definitely not her. Trump, I don't really know what to handle or expect at this point in time. I may not vote at all. It's going to be very difficult for any pollster such as myself to get this right. There are about 6 moving parts rather than 4. Well, because turnout's not as easy to project. I can normally tell you the exact number of Republicans that will vote in a presidential election, general election, as well as Democrats. We're very good at that with our data. But right now you have a portion of Republicans that are like, I can't do it with Trump. I'm either not going to vote or not vote for him at all. So you'll have an undervote in the presidential, and then you have all the younger Bernie supporters that are like, I'm really not excited to vote for Hillary. I'm not going to vote at all. So turnout levels could be lower than they perhaps have ever been since 8 or 12.
I'll tell you what, let's talk about Colorado specifically, and let's get off Trump for a little bit.
Sure.
We have some big races here. In case you didn't know, we got a Senate race, which is potentially the biggest pickup opportunity for Republicans in the country, with a very weak incumbent. But given Caldeira's political axiom, I don't know if that's going to happen. Do you have any numbers to show what may or may not happen?
I don't have any fresh numbers, but I think any incumbent senator right now, and it's tough for a senator to lay the groundwork. Senator Bennett's up running ads right now, but our Republican primary candidates right now seem pretty weak, just to be kind. They've had a hard enough time just getting on the ballot, let alone who has resources and really defining and appealing to the middle. Even though, yes, it is the best opportunity for the Republicans to pick up a seat, our team right now is still in the middle of a primary, and it's unclear how they're going to emerge from that. And Bennett's already running ads. He's got a big pot of money. And,
big old pot of money.
And he's going to introduce himself to voters probably much better than Mark Udall did 2 years ago.
We have initiatives coming up. The only one that is certainly on the ballot is Amendment 69, which turns Colorado into a single-payer Canada-style healthcare system.
Correct.
And when you dive into it, it is scary.
Yes.
It is a job killer. But everybody who lives here gets free healthcare. You know, come
That's
on
right.
in. The jobs go, but
The
people
dream.
come.
That's right.
You've been working on this one. Give me the numbers. I can't imagine this has a snowball's chance in hell, so please make me feel good about that.
Well, we've looked at it from a research standpoint in a number of different ways. From a quantitative survey, yes, when you educate voters on Colorado Care, which is what they're calling it, what they're branding it as, and read them just the good stuff, you know, choice of doctor, you will never have to deal with an insurance company ever again. You'll never have to fill out the forms. And to somebody that has a chronic health issue, such as older voters, this sounds very appealing. And you can move them away from, you know, really where they start out. Just half of the folks, we looked at this a few months ago, saying, no, there's no way I'm going to do this if you just read in the ballot language. But then when you read to them just the good stuff, and you see, all right, who can I move if you only knew about the good stuff, you actually can get over 50% support. But,
really?
Yes. But Bernie's folks, Bernie's army is what's carrying it, because, you know, we could have 1 out of 4 voters being 34 or younger in this state, and that's Bernie's crowd.
But there's also this little part about it raising taxes
10%, correct.
to the highest.
Yes, 4.6% up to 14.6%.
Right. This is our income tax is 4.6% roughly.
Yes.
And this would add 10 points to that.
Correct.
And it would double. That's
Yes.
we're gonna get
And
double.
just in case you haven't,
double the size of the state
and it
budget.
doesn't spare our hardworking retirees. Retirement income vehicles are taxed as well. Not Social Security, but others. So
your pension, your
it's all
401k.
fair game, right? And when you kind of bring that into the equation, we focus grouped this among a bunch of independent women, and we had references to Canada, Sweden healthcare. No way, you got to be kidding me. When people learn the basic facts, support craters pretty quickly.
What about the idea of? Do you get into the part that there's going to be this unelected committee that gets to decide what your care is going to be?
That's right, and they are empowered under this language to raise rates as they see fit. You know, they need $25 billion a year to make this thing run. It technically does get rid of Obamacare. You know, you think, oh, that's going to sound really good to conservatives. But when they learn the other details, yes, it's, you know, it's projected
do they have the
to
power? Do they have the power to raise taxes too?
They do. They do.
This is crazy. So this unelected board will have when this thing starts going south, and it will.
Yes.
They have the power to unilaterally increase our taxes to cover it.
They are, and we've all heard about.
Nice.
You know,
I want to be on that board.
Yes. Well, it's in there. They are empowered. It is. It's a pretty. The only other state that's actually attempted something like this is Vermont, and they had to shut the thing down just because it nearly bankrupted the entire state. They're like, all right,
that's all. That's all.
Right. So, you know, I don't know how much money the Colorado Care folks have supporting and promoting this, but I would fully expect this to be rejected by voters once they learn the facts.
You did a little work for me because I wanted to find out what was going on a couple other possible initiatives. One is the attack on Tabor, because there's always an attack on Tabor. 2 years ago, there was an attack on Tabor for the kids that was trounced 2-1, even though they spent $12 million on it.
Right.
2 years before that, Raleigh Heath was a prop, I forget, was it
It was about $1 billion a year. He wanted unfettered, big old pot of money for education.
And that got destroyed as well. So they hoped this year that they could sneak in this hospital provider fee through the legislature, basically destroying the taxpayer Bill of Rights, but not going to vote. That failed. So a couple rich guys want to put on something to destroy Tabor, maybe for just 10 years, and jack up permanently the baseline.
Yes.
Tell me that those numbers were not as encouraging for their side as I would have thought.
Yes. 2 ways of looking at Tabor as we sort of present Tabor factually to respondents when we're doing our surveys. There's 2 parts to it. One is, obviously, local governments can't raise taxes unfettered without your approval. Voters really like that. It keeps a control on spending. The idea of weakening Tabor in times of downturn, sort of son of Ref C, if you remember that back in 2005.
Oh, I remember it.
Right, and I had a big hand in that. I remember it was one of your shining moments. It's similar to that. Voters, in some senses, like, do we all really need a $78 rebate? Probably not. But for the most part, they prefer to have it in place because it is the only check on spending. And that's really sort of a natural value that I consider, in Colorado voters. It's that center-right, fiscally conservative, like, hey, hey, hey.
The numbers show that that's not selling. I mean, maybe with a lot of money they could get it over 50%, but when you start off below 50% on a tax increase like this, you can't get it over.
It's tough. If you're going to try to pass it, this is the year to do it, because so many younger voters, which are more tax tolerant, as I say.
Right. Tax tolerant.
They are tax tolerant. So yes, but it's not good. People like their tabor in place.
And so do I. David, thank you. Thank you. Listen for me on KHOW Radio. Tell a friend, and we'll see you next week.